Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the Duck Talks, number 26 already. And I want to begin with some questions from last week's Duck Talks and some general questions that I get asked throughout all my videos more and more often. First of all, yes, I'm from Germany. To be a bit more precise, I'm from Bavaria, right in the middle. And yeah, Bavaria is awesome. It's a really great country indeed, and I think whoever visited Bavaria knows that we have some excellent beer and we really like it. Nevertheless, I am more or less an open minded guy, and I have to say, for all people from Bavaria, please open your mind a little bit to the rest of Germany, except for Cologne, because they have beer that just simply sucks. Okay, end of that roast. More on this in a moment, probably the roasting part. And the next general question is probably why I do my videos in English. Now that's a good question. I'm from Germany, and a large War Thunder player base is actually from Germany. But English allows me to actually do my tank reviews and all the review parts, even for certain planes and so on, for the rest of the world. And English is the language of the world practically, and so I think it's a good decision. Furthermore, you really wouldn't enjoy my German. Why? Well, because I have a very strong accent, a Bavarian accent, and I think when I speak, so-called German, it would be more understandable to actually me speaking English for the rest of the German population that is not from Bavaria. Funny thing is that Bavarian people understand the rest of the Germans, even with the strongest accent, but they can't understand us. Funny story, I know. A lot of jokes were made about this, but now you get a feeling for it. Furthermore, it is about how it also began. I was invited to something called the Gentleman's Hangar on TeamSpeak, and it all began with Squire or Squire Flyer, and he wanted to make a video and he needed a bit of help in the shape of people having to drive certain tanks around a battlefield, and him making certain cinematic shots of that. And then I stuck to it, and that was way before I even began to make YouTube. And so yeah, that was kind of the beginning of it all. So, and then I just got so used to talk in English to people all around the world. And funny story, I think I told it once. When I first met Mike Goes Boom, I did not really recognize him being able to speak German, and he did not really recognize me speaking, English as a German. And maybe he did not feel the accent that strong as, being kind of half German himself. And it took us like, I don't know, 10-15 minutes to figure out that we just simply can't speak German. Yeah, I have days where I speak with a bit more accent and with a bit less accent. Might have been a day with a bit less accent. So, then, the actual questions. Peter Kingdom asked if when he can roast me on Reddit. Now this is kind of an unusual question, and the simple answer is I don't think anytime soon. So I just want to do my thing, okay? I have visions and ideas for the future of my YouTube channel and the game and so on, and there is so much content all around that I do not go on Reddit. And from what I've heard from other content creators, other YouTubers, many people that just go to Reddit, it's just, a salt mine. That's all it is, okay? And people, I visited it, at some point and read some forum posts and all that. I have to say I don't really like hanging out there. It's just not my cup of tea. I'm sorry. It might change in the future, but I don't have any plans anytime soon. Then Flynn Williams asked, why do you choose the alias Napalm? Okay, that's a very yeah. Okay, let's call it a bit story time. Everything is a story in my opinion. But back to the question, the alias Napalm or Napalmratte, as it is actually pronounced. I'm okay with you calling me Napalm, but please don't do the mistake and just write Napalm like so many people do when they just write me in realistic battles and say, hey Napalm, there's somebody behind you. I just Is it so difficult to type in the M? I don't get it. Well, how did it begin? Well, I was at a friend's house and we played, what was it? Call of Duty. It was Call of Duty, and I did not have a functional computer at that time, so I just made an account on his PC and from time to time played a little bit. And I just wanted to have a name, but not this XXX bad dude, XXX triple X superstar triple X, something like that. That was too generic. It just was too cheap. But that's over 10 years ago, right? So I thought, I just desperately searched for a name, certain type of animal that's just really, not that much beloved by certain people. And at the end of the day, it was Napalmratte, and I ever stick to it since then. Then, next question comes from James V.D. Bosch, and it's a very long article that he actually wrote, but I hope I can summarize it with this. He asks me about, the T-64 and the Chieftain Mark V4 and the Leopard 1A3 with APFSDS and so on, and what I think of that. And then he also stated some stats and so on. Well, first of all, I have to say this. Eventually, I think we will see them, okay? After the introduction of ATGMs, it can't get any worse. Now, I'm not saying that ATGMs are completely brainless, but I don't want to face them when I play my Second World War tanks. And that's the actual problem. The compression in the game, okay, has to be solved first before we extend the range. If you are familiar with planes, okay, we always had a huge compression issue at jet level from the beginning of War Thunder up until this point. And instead of fixing it by adding new jets and then, spreading the battle rating range of jets, and to just fill in some gaps, Gaijin decided it would be nice to add the MiG-17, which brings absolutely nothing new to the table, the Hawker Hunter, and the F-8 Cougar, if I'm not mistaken, So, and the same will happen for tanks, in my opinion. If we get those vehicles now, do you really think they get a battle rating of 9.0? I guess they will get a battle rating of 8.0, okay? And to face a T-64 with my mouse and my E100, oh, come on, that the E100 and the mouse and the Jagdtiger, they do not have the APDS HE shell that they should get because it was an experimental round, but it actually was to a certain degree produced as far as I can tell. And it doesn't have this. Now, just for you to actually look at that, when you look at early photos from the dev logs of the E100, you see that it has a big muzzle brake that looks awesome. It doesn't have it in the game, like the mouse doesn't have this muzzle brake. And that, as far as I can tell, was removed for the addition of the APDS rounds. Now, what has a muzzle brake to do with APDS rounds? Well, they have this propellant cage, okay, and it falls off after exiting the barrel. But if you exit the barrel and the cage comes off, there is the muzzle brake. So muzzle brakes and APDS rounds do not really work together. Yes, I know there's the British 17-pounder and there is the T10M with this massive muzzle brake, and they all have APDS rounds. Don't ask me why. I'm just working here, more or less. So then the next question would be from Sergeant Rumbo. it's practically the simple question in German: if I have my own Discord channel. The answer is practically, also directly no, practically yes, but I don't use it. Okay, it's called the Gentleman's Hangar, and I'm the highest guy there at the moment, and nobody uses it. And I have to say, everybody gets its own Discord channel. I am just, using Discord if I squad up with somebody, or if I have a nice conversation or a rant with somebody. I don't think that with my channel size and overall how Discord works, I will get my own Discord. You will find me on the Orange Doom's Discord or Many Miles Away's Discord and so on. There are many Discords that I'm part of, but to set up my own specific Discord, I don't know. TeamSpeak was once something that I really used on a daily basis. Nowadays, Discord kind of replaced it from also how other people use it. And the big downside of this is that in Discord you don't have to be in a channel to see who is in a channel. In TeamSpeak it was a bit different. So many people are online, but they are not in a channel. Okay, and that is kind of a bit, disappointing, and a part of how it actually got back in the shape of interacting with other people. So technically I have my own one. It's called the Gentleman's Hangar, but I don't use it. From time to time I'm looking at it, but just looking at it. That's all. So the next question would be from Rekordabsteiger. Nice name. You must be a fan of the 1. FC Nürnberg. Okay, that was a terrible joke, but everybody that knows the German Bundesliga knows what I'm talking about. Okay, how about the Chieftain Mark III as a heavy tank support for the Leopards? Well, that is a very interesting question. Now, if practically the problem that we have in terms of realistic battle speaking is that the Chieftain is a British tank and the Leopard is a German tank, and they mostly fight each other. If the Germans would get the Chieftain Mark III, I have no idea if Germany ever had access to Chieftain tanks. I don't think it would be really that great, okay, because it's more or less a main battle tank, and it's also not the fastest vehicle if you compare it to the Leopard. Now, why is that important? Well, this is a bit more outlining here. I hope you stay with me. Okay, when you look at the Soviet tech tree, okay, their heavy tanks, in particular the T-10M, is not really slower than the medium tanks, and they all have really great performing guns with enough penetration, even with the stock shells, to deal with the overwhelming majority of enemies. Then there is also the part that in certain cases the T-54-47, as an example, has actually more armor than the overwhelming majority of other nations' heavy tanks at this battle rating, okay? And people, I'm sorry, but shot trapping, really? This is how you have to take this medium tank out with other nations' heavy tanks? Yeah, I could give you numerous examples where I just say that Soviet tanks have really great armor and outstandingly well working armor, and still decent mobility, great guns. They're just all around perfect, and the difference between medium and heavy tanks is not that great in their overall performance. The biggest difference we see in the German tech tree: the Maus as the heavy tank for Leopards. What you see very often in realistic battles is that when the mouse reaches the combat zone, either all the Leopards are dead or all the Leopards killed the rest of the enemy team. That is an issue. The speed difference and mobility difference is just way too big. For the British ones, well, the Chieftain and the Conqueror, they are kind of similar, although I have to say the Conqueror is nothing but a completely nerfed Chieftain, in my opinion, if you look at the stats. And for the Japanese, yeah, they are still new. I expect numerous additions to their tech tree, and not just the AAA, with the next 3 or 4 patches, and for the Americans, they are a bit on the strange side because their tanks stock are not really great. I can tell you that. And as great as a T-32 is in terms of when it's top tier and it can go hull down, it's one tank. Then there is the M103. I love it, but stock it's really strange. Then there is also all the American medium tanks without heat FS. Oh boy. Yeah, and their stock shells, they just suck amazingly. So then we are already over 15 minutes into the video. Let's talk about the actual topics and let's talk about certain weekend events. First of all, the Navy tests, and I played the Dark MGB for the first time with the 114mm HE howitzer, and holy moly, I had one kind of night battle and it looked amazing. I was so deeply impressed with the visuals that I decided to give the name to this week's episode of the Duck Talks, the name of what I thought it is, because it was just like firing proton torpedoes, you know, like from Star Trek. I'm not really a ultra hardcore Trekkie, but I like the series and the movies and that all, and the visuals just, I had this night battle and the red tracer with the new tracers, tracer effects, it was just point on, and the damage, I love it. But then there were planes, and planes ruined it all again. And yeah, when you had the gun being disabled or something, you were down to this 40mm, you had to show broadside or change your direction, and then you got hammered with a few shells and you were dead again. So it was not really that enjoyable. I want to see more nations. I want to see the Japanese nation again, because it's been a while since we saw it, and please, Gaijin, rework those maps. I mean, African Gulf is a nice low tier map, but Scandinavia is still okay-ish, but the new one, what's the name, English Shore, I despise it. I don't like it. The map design is just not great, and the maps are too small. That's the issue. Like, it's the ocean, you know, ships, ocean, and we have just a very small combat zone. I know it's pre-beta test, but you know, you try things out, and I have to just simply raise it right now. I don't like it. It's not enjoyable, okay? At least in my opinion. I can't support it. The map design, that is. I mean, yes, when I first played planes, I had no idea of boom and zoom and turn fighting and flaps and so on. And when I played tanks for the first time, I had no idea of hull down, side scraping, peekaboo, ambushing and so on. And I'm quite sure that I will develop tactics for ships as well. But at the moment, you know, one big issue is that it has never changed. It was always this in the tests. You fired at the enemy, you inflicted heavy damage, he fired back with one shell, and you burned, and you were crippled, you were slowed down, you were still combat effective, but you were already, you know, shot at. You were already at your downfall. A few more shells and you still were not out of action, but you were more and more useless. And while that is kind of realistic, you never could really reach an ambush except with torpedoes, but not every ship has torpedoes, and then it's just the great wall of skill, you know. Every World of Warship players knows what he's up against when he has to face the Japanese destroyers, for example, okay? And so it's still pre-beta, and I hope that we will see numerous changes to that. But then that was not all. First of all, I can announce an amazing P51 video incoming with the normal P51, not the one with the 50 cals, you know, the one with the 4 Hispano cannons. An amazing plane. I regret not having flown it, you know, previously in realistic with the current performance. It's amazing. I love it. The battle is already recorded, commented, and it's about to be uploaded. You will see it tomorrow or the next few days. I promise you it's amazing. The same goes for an E100 video. You guys really love this E100 video. Over 12,000 views, for my channel size, with the average video having something between 800 and maybe 3,000 views. 12,000 views is a thing. You guys really love the E100, so I took it out in a kind of different battle, and it will be arcade. Don't hate on arcade, my friends. You will see why, because the battle was great and the message behind it as well. And then that brings us to the Spitfire event. The Spitfire event was like Spitfires versus the V1 rockets. Funnily enough, it kind of showed the same kind of meta in the actual outcome that we saw or that we see in realistic battles. Let me explain it to you because it's quite funny in my opinion. So the Spitfires and the Bf-109s / the Focke-Wulfs spawned at the same altitude, but relatively close to each other. So it took like 1 or 2 minutes of climbing up until they met. So this is a bit of a narrower combat area than like in normal realistic battles. However, it was the Bf-109 G10, G14 if I'm not mistaken, the K4 and also the Focke-Wulf D9 against a lot of Griffin Spitfires, including the F-22. Now that actually replaces to a certain degree, funnily enough, the realistic battles conditions. Not just that the British had 2 planes less, but they also had to intercept the V1s, which were incoming at lower altitude. So already the Spitfires were forced to scatter themselves. A few of them were going after the V1s and they had to shoot them down, otherwise they would destroy the airfield, which then would tick down, and the rest of the Spitfires had to deal with the Germans at altitude. And now it actually comes in very nicely that the Germans just refused to spread out but climbed together in a massive wolf pack. And as much as a Spitfire has skill and advantages in terms of flight performance and so on, you can dogfight one. Even if the Griffin Spitfires are more or less the boom and zoom variant of the Spitfires. I mean, the ultimate Spitfire is the Mark 9, without a shadow of a doubt, or the LF that is. And the Griffins still could turn with the Germans and outturn them easily, but just with one, not with 2 or 3 Germans around you, okay? And so the tactic with the Germans was to engage the enemy, and then our next German came in and engaged in as well. So the Spitfire never had the chance to really turn fight. And that was funny, because the Germans nearly always won that. And that was just amazing to look at. When I was playing the British, we won once because the Germans made a lot of 1 versus 1s. But when it got the usual outcome, it was a clear victory for the Germans. And in this respect, this is like the British having less fighters in the first place, and a lot of them just refuse to climb in normal realistic battles. The rest of the team is filled up with bombers, which do not really decide the outcome and are more or less gun food for experienced German fighter pilots. So it seemed unfair at first when you looked at the planes, but the actual battle and battle scenario was heavily in the Germans' favor when played right, and the Germans mostly played it right. So in this respect, this was my weekend. Those were the questions answered. I hope you enjoyed the background footage, and thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this weekend's kind of events, and if you already like, or if you like them at all, what would you like to see in terms of an event. Ask any questions that you want to get answers here in the Duck Talks. I will answer them in the next episode, which will be Duck Talks number 27, I guess. Yes. And that's it for me today. So Give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.